You're calling from an 886 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Chris from Taiwan.
What's going on, Chris?
Nothing much. So I subjected myself to that monk debate with Michael Eric Dyson and Michelle Goldberg and
Right.
Whiny Kermit Frog and that other guy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to say really
so
quickly. I'm sorry. Just in reference to the last caller, I was really slow on this, and I just saw an IM pop in. That's right. It's
Okay, go
total.
ahead.
It's a different case because the NFL is a private union, and Janus applies to public sector unions. That's the difference right there. My mistake for being slow on that. Okay, go ahead. You saw the monk debate. You subjected yourself to that, and
Yeah. I know you saw it too, right? You did a bit on it on your
yeah,
CMBS
I
show.
saw. I went. I won't say I saw every single
Did you
moment
watch
of
the
it.
whole thing, or did you just
No, I didn't watch. I
enough
couldn't
to?
watch the whole thing. I probably watched about an hour of it, and
Okay.
then
Well,
and then
I don't blame you.
it was
Well,
insufferable.
I had a bit of a revelation. I had a bit of a revelation while watching that show.
Yeah.
So there were multiple occasions in that debate where Peterson or Fry would begin whatever they're going to say with a disclaimer, saying something like, of course we're against discrimination and oppression. We all agree on that. That's obvious, but, and then they would move on to something else.
Right.
And I realized that rhetorical trick so perfectly encapsulates how this so-called intellectual dark web thinks about these issues.
Right.
It's in their minds, these conversations about racism, about subjugation of women, about class-based oppression or whatever else, these conversations are already over because they've already run their course.
Right.
They think that these problems have already been solved.
Right.
So they merit nothing more than a sort of afterthought.
Right.
They think that these so-called social justice warriors who are still talking about these things and devoting energy and attention to these things are just chasing ghosts, and just imagining problems.
Well,
I
think that's very generous. I think that might be Stephen Fry's position, right? So Stephen Fry strikes me as more just like, he's a charming guy and he's basically a pretty out of touch kind of actor and social performer trying to do like an Oscar Wilde act. And it's nice. And I actually, he's very likable. But my impression is that he's more on the spectrum of he's in his closed social loops and he sees a certain, annoying liberal performativity or call out culture or whatever. And then just like if you're on a college campus, you extrapolate that to the whole world. And then you have very foolish diagnoses of the major political issues of the day. I think in someone like Peterson's case, I don't take on good faith when he says that. I don't. I am very suspect as to what his actual politics and motives are. I don't take it on Sam Harris's good faith. I think somebody who, simultaneously says that ideas are the most important things in the world in a totally non-materialized and non-reality based way, but then also is like, we should have the right to just sort of like recklessly play around and promote and state as fact speculatively racist ideas is not only profoundly hypocritical, it's also, I think, indicative actually of, who knows? I don't know. But I don't take on face value.
So are you saying when they offer this disclaimer, of course we all are against discrimination and oppression and so on and so forth. You don't even think that they are. You think that that is
I'll soften it. I'll soften it slightly. I don't know what that means to them. So I could see a scenario like I read, I've read pro-apartheid propaganda that suggested that, very few people write, I am pro-discrimination, right? Like that's not good branding, particularly in the United States. But I definitely think, especially if you're going to like narrow it down to, we don't legally discriminate, but you have not only are you not interested in any type of systemic redress of inequalities and other institutions of oppression or problems, and in fact, you're actually constantly seeking to undermine that position, then no, I would really question. And I think in Peterson's case specifically, I would be very I mean, I think if you started pushing him on gender-based and those types of issues, I would not take that on good faith when he says that. No, I wouldn't.
Did you see the part of that debate where that was his most angry part of the debate, where he was just combatively demanding that Michael Eric Dyson quantify.
Well, yeah, I played that on my show.
Whatever his white privilege is.
I played that on my show.
Yeah. And then getting indignant the next moment when Michael Eric Dyson brings up his race.
Well, I said
you just asked the only.
Well, I think I agree, and I actually think that I think that the idea. I mean, first of all, as I said on the show on Tuesday, it takes a lot of balls to, on the same week that you're in the New York Times saying that dragons are real, to say, you better quantify my white privilege. That's tremendous balls. I'll give him that. But I think that is very evocative of all of these people. Now, of course, we can, to some extent, quantify things like that. We could talk about intergenerational wealth theft, the impact of discrimination on earnings, the realities about police killings and all this sort of stuff. But the broader point, and it's funny because in Peterson's case, it's particularly galling because on one hand, he wants to say everything is natural. He wants to be a quantitative reductionist, but then on the other hand, he wants to, basically promote like very woo-woo, very pre-rational ideologies, right? So he's incoherent in that sense. Now, Harris is a pure, let's throw bleach on any form of human understanding that isn't just crude quantitative reductionism or scientism. But that line where you're basically saying, anything that's politics, anything that's history, anything that's context, anything that's, just a sort of basic exercise in moral imagination is ridiculous because you can't quantify it. That is their project. And the consequence of that project is discriminatory. And it is opposed to a politics of equity. Also, equality of opportunity, not outcome, is a totally meaningless phrase. It doesn't mean a thing. You cannot have equality of certain outcomes you cannot have equality of opportunity without equality of certain outcomes. If everybody doesn't have health care, full, complete health care coverage from birth till death, that affects their opportunities, period. It's an incoherent statement. So even that whole talking point, which of course no one ever asks them to fill the detail in because it sounds like something you should support, is meaningless on introspection. And you could really start to say, like, well, wait a second, what are we shouldn't all, I mean, even by classical liberal metrics, you're saying we shouldn't all have equality under the law, period? What are you saying? And that's when you can really start to, dissect, like, okay, like, not everybody gets to win an NBA championship. That's true. There's an outcome we're not all entitled to. Everybody's entitled to housing, healthcare, vacation, a form of economic democracy and control over their livelihoods. If those things are not there, then equality of opportunity is a fake, disingenuous scam concept with no substance to it.
Word. I just think, the truth is that I think we're in a moment in history when progress in these areas, whether it's racism or subjugation of women or whatever, we're in a moment in history where this progress is being threatened and even being rolled back in many places in the world.
Yep.
And these intellectual dark web types, they don't notice it because of, their privilege. And they
or in some cases they support it.
They think you're just bullshitting.
Well, no, I think in some cases they support it. I think in some cases they are part of that rollback. I think you're right in some cases. I think maybe like a Brett Weinstein. He seems to be the guy that, he had this terrible experience at Evergreen, whatever. We don't have to re-dissect that. He's built a little brand.
He didn't
for himself.
represent that perfectly. He didn't
Yeah, no,
represent that
I know,
perfectly,
and
honestly.
He's a shithead.
yeah, I'm not whatever. I mean, I think there's criticisms to go around in all directions on that one, but his ideas are kind of just, they seem like sort of just bio neoliberalism. Like maybe he's someone that theoretically I could read the most charitably of them. Which is that he's just utterly deluded by the own narrowness of his circumstance. But I am not prepared to buy that, Jordan Peterson just doesn't, he isn't reading the broader dynamics and is on the same page with us. I don't think he is. I don't. That would be
so you think
guess.
they understand the historical moment that we're in, and they're taking the wrong side. That's what you're saying, basically.
I think it's a fair summary. I mean, with a lot of different, there's shades to it, but yes, I mean, I think, look, the bottom line is, and this goes for all of them without all their particular eccentricities. If you look at today's world and all of the things happening, the rollbacks you're talking about, the rise of governments that explicitly are threatening foundational liberties, the inequalities, a tech economy that is completely ungoverned and only going to reinforce those things. Not to mention the environmental crisis. And you are
man. Elon Musk is an innovator,
right?
Okay?
Well, there you go. Exactly. Well, that's one end of that pole of stupidity. But you're really kind of basically saying that, college professors or students are like some major threat or impediment. You are, whether it's by just being delusional or whatever, you are on the wrong side of history. And by the way, I say that as somebody who criticizes regularly a lot of these sort of, I don't think a lot of those campus political trends are helpful for the left. I don't think they're good.
Oh, I know you don't. I've heard you say that. Yeah, I've heard the Young Turks report about that too. And I've been very clear about that.
I have a critique of it, but I mean, I also want to add this. I have a critique of it, but I also think it's pretty amazing that in addition to these people's victim complex and their complete massive misalignment of understanding how the world works today and the actual problems we face outside of their own personal bubbles, it is striking to me. And it's, this is a cliche at this point. We already know that these people, they're constantly whining about being censored and they have unlimited media opportunities. But in addition to that, I would like to say that, I'll say this. I thought the way that I disagree with how the students were with Charles Murray at Middlebury. I think that was totally wrong, bad call. Some of the things I've heard at Evergreen, I think are very critiquable, right? There has not been a single media platform, at least as far as a national one that I know of, that has ever said, Brett Weinstein's coming on and he has this whole melodramatic story to tell about how he was treated. Can one of the student leaders that dealt with him also come on the show and give their perspective? I haven't seen that anywhere. I haven't seen a single person say, we were protesting Charles Murray and some people got a little bit, physical, which we didn't intend, but we were just there to register our opposition to his structural reinforcement of inequality and racism. I have not. So not only do these people get endless attention and yet whine they're oppressed, their oppressors, quote unquote, are never on the scene. We have not heard from a single student who's protested. We haven't heard from a single professor who's objected. And, so I also think that is, and even these like cringe videos, and I've said it, some of them are cringe, and some of the students, it's just bad. It's a bad look. It's a bad representation. But I haven't seen videos where, somebody is cool, calm, and collective and does a good job at responding to these people. It's a massive propaganda effort. And even to the extent where, we can have these criticisms, it's awe-inspiring that there has not been you could not even name a public persona on Twitter that like represents the students in these conflicts. It's a faceless blob
Right.
that these people are constantly self-defining as they get endless media coverage, and there isn't even an opportunity for anybody on the other side of this story to make their case. And that should be in the mix, because that's fucking awe-inspiring. And it's a major problem. Agree
Well
or
said.
disagree with any specific
Well
tactic.
said, man. Yeah, well said. And even if you take the most least charitable interpretation of the college protest, the idea that is the most pressing threat to freedom of speech,
Delusional.
That we should all be focusing on. Like, give me a break.
Delusional.
All
Nuts.
right, I've taken up enough of your time.
Appreciate
Thank you so
the call.
much for taking my call.
Thank you. We'll probably clip that.